Hey everybody, how you doing? Well, that's good. Welcome to PHLY Flyers presented by Mortgage CS. Check out mortgagecs.com/PHLY to start your home buying process today. Company NMLS ID number 1464766. My name is Bill Matz. I'm your director of fun and games for this afternoon. Joining me as always is Philadelphia's #1 hockey beat reporter, Charlie O'Connor. You're still pounding away over there, man.
Sure
You're
am.
taking this draft preview seriously.
I'm trying to get this tweet out so we can promote the show.
Okay, all right. Now we're gonna spend a lot of time today looking ahead to the 2024 NHL Entry Draft. Flyers pick number 12. One of the final 4 picks of the first round. We'll see where that ends up with Florida. Potentially pick number 36 from Columbus. We'll see if they want to give it to us this year. And then 51, the compensatory pick for Jay O'Brien.
Jay O'Brien, just give him back.
Yeah, just
the gift that keeps on giving.
So I'm like, well, basically you traded him for a second. It's like, well, he was a first. I had to look up the formula because I forgot it. And he was the 19th pick. So you get the second round equivalent of that. Correct. So it's number 51 in this year's draft. So there's actually 65 picks in the first 2 rounds this year. Everyone else behind that just gets moved back a spot. So the Flyers could have 4 spots, and we know one of the positions they are in desperate need to fill is that of the center position. So we're going to look at centers today in terms of the prospects the Flyers may have their eyes on, but it was just like a conversation we were having as we were going live because it's freaking hilarious. So the Phils picked, they tabbed Dom Brown to come back. Dominic Brown, the former #1 prospect in baseball, ahead of some guy named Mike Trout at one point. Thanks, Baseball America. You nailed that one. Just unbelievable.
It's not an exact science,
like
Bill.
Better than Mickey Mantle. The guy ahead of him had a really good 6 weeks. But we were just saying, if the Flyers were to have a ceremonial first puck drop or something, let's get a round of applause for a guy. Who is the Dom Brown equivalent for the Flyers? I can't even, a dude who highly touted, had a run, and then it just he's out of baseball a year and a half after that run.
I can't think of anybody who is quite that perfect of an equivalent, because there isn't. Dom Brown had the high upside. He was always kind of a project, seemed like he was putting it together, and then just when it seemed like he was putting it together, he completely collapsed. My
guess was Ville Leno, but that, even though it was a short run, it's a whole playoff that went to a Stanley Cup final,
and then a whole
season after that where he was really good.
Actually, Ville Leno is perfect for the Flyers because they got a great playoff run out of him, they got a great season out of him, and then they didn't give him the bad contract.
It's honestly unbelievable that they didn't overpay Ville Leno. It's the fact that Buffalo gave him what turned out to be one of the worst contracts in NHL. The guy scored no goals the final year before they bought him out. I don't think he scored 1.
So we have some suggestions here.
We have some people.
Okay, Ghost, no, he was too good for too long.
He had 3 really good years.
I mean, he was good for a half decade. It's just people got angry at him, decided he stunk, but he was actually good he was at least good, I would say, for his entire tenure. He was great for a few years.
He was fine. And the first 3 years were objectively excellent. I know that middle one, you look at the numbers and go, but everything else was really good. Also, he actually played defense that second year.
He had a bad coach who was scratching him a bunch.
Yeah,
come on.
Also.
Then we have Nolan Patrick. Definitely not, in my opinion, because he would get booed. He would get booed.
Yeah.
Dom Brown is going to get the polite cheer.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I remember that guy. It was
We're good
fun
now. It's all fine.
If Nolan Patrick showed up to drop the puck, he would be booed.
Yes.
So that's a no. Yuri Dopita is a good one.
That's an interesting
one.
I
dig Yuri Dopita because he was, for a while, the best player not in the NHL. They bring him over. He was Czech Monik's buddy. Yeah. It was hype there, and then he just flopped and then went back to Europe. The guy who I came up with, Danius Zubris. Because I feel like he had moments. He was a top prospect, first-round pick, had all the physical tools. The only difference is that he did then have a successful NHL career elsewhere. It's not like he just stopped playing in the NHL after the Flyers dumped him. Yeah. But I feel like he's a guy where there's enough positive feelings after 20 years where he would get a nice little cheer, I think. No. But everybody would be like, yeah, you were disappointed. But I remember that one game.
Yeah. No, I think Dopita is because he had
Yuri Dopita is a good one.
Yuri Dopita because he also had the 4-goal game against Atlanta, and he ended up only scoring 11 goals. His first, I mean, he's 33 in his rookie year, and then like he plays a handful of games the next year, but it's over. Like it's so quick for him. I think Dopita is an excellent one because even if it's just that one game, like he scored 4 goals in a goddamn game. How many dudes have done that? And like that's close to like a Dom Brown-esque run there.
Jerry Mayhew from CMZ.
That's
the thing. I actually feel
was he actually good?
He wasn't. I actually feel bad. I feel bad for Mayhew a little bit because he got wrapped up by no fault of his own. He got wrapped up in the complete and total lack of awareness of the Philadelphia fan, the Flyers fan, of Dave Scott. Because I will never be able to separate Jerry Mayhew from he had that really good game, and then we talked to Dave Scott and Chuck like the next day, and before we even start, Dave Scott's like, I just got to say, how about that Jerry Mayhew? Love that guy. And it was just like, there could have been nothing more out of touch. Like the fan base wants to literally like tar and feather everyone involved in the organization. And Dave Scott, the guy who they never get to see, is like, how about that Quade guy who had a good game? It was just, it fell so flat. And because it was not Jerry Mayhew's fault. He had a nice little 2-week run during a season that was miserable otherwise, and that was cool. But I will never be able to separate Mayhew from the Dave Scott press conference where he talked him up as if like that's what we're trying to sell the fan base in this debacle of a season.
Man. Like that was just that's the example of the complete lack of any awareness whatsoever.
And Dave Scott was a perfectly nice human, but it's just that he did not get it.
The guy running,
he had no idea how to connect with Flyers fans.
No idea how to connect with Flyers, and like you need not be commenting on hockey, sir. That was the problem. It's like, hey, we need Mr. Snyder here to like tell us everything's gonna be okay and he's gonna fix this shit, and it's like, how about Jerry May? You just asked me to fight, is what you just did. You just challenged me to a fight, sir. But listen, at least that era is behind us, and now we look ahead to this new era of Orange. And it's underway here, and with all the Matvei Michkov stuff. Like if you saw my pre-show tweet, it was like, listen, there's no Michkov news today, but we are going to have a show.
Somebody suggested Fedotenko. That is definitely a no. That's a no because he was so good against the Flyers in that Lightning series to me.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
Like, I mean, he betrayed us.
It's such a specific, he betrayed us. Although Dom Brown Cowboys fan, so I
forgot about that.
That's a betrayal.
Forgot he was a Cowboys fan.
Yeah,
did not remember that.
That's a betrayal of sorts. We're gonna look at centers in today's draft as the Flyers look to go ahead with this rebuild. I will say I looked at some of the YouTube comments yesterday, and we had somebody saying we need to stop calling it a rebuild. And I do think like tanking the Sixers process and like the overall, like, okay, well, if you're going to rebuild, you have to tear it all the way. Like there are more than one way to rebuild. And this is not a retool. I do think they have some things here that if they could, they would get rid of, but they can't. So it's kind of, they're in a holding pattern with certain guys like Couturier and Sanheim.
Yeah.
But like
Sanheim, I think they might, especially after let me put it this way. Had he not had the no trade clause that kicked in on July 1st last summer, I don't think he survives the summer. But after this season, now I think they are like, we need like a vet to put with our young defenseman. I think Sanheim probably sticks around. Couturier, though, it's the no trade and the contract that is keeping it, to be sure.
And like, even though some guys are going to be here or this thing might take a little longer because they are here, whatever, this team is going to be built around players who are not wearing the jersey yet.
Agreed.
Like Owen Tippett, and like there are players from previous regimes that are going to be here, but I don't think they're going to be the stars of the team. Cam York, he's hopefully going to be very good. But I don't see number one defenseman in Cam York.
I agree with that.
I don't think it's, he's one of our cornerstones. I don't see that. So I did just want to say, like, there is more than one way to rebuild, and I think people just kind of think it has to be a complete teardown. Listen, that's what I would do. We've both said if we were in charge, that kind of would have been how we went about this thing. But because of the Couturier injury. Listen, they tried to trade Sanheim.
Yeah,
Like
they gave it a go.
it was on the Blues.
Yeah.
You know, like it was on Torrey Krug. That's the reason he's here. It is. There are more than one ways to do it, though.
Yeah, and I think too, it's just that, like, there are so many ways to rebuild. There are a lot of different ways to do it, and if you're gonna say that a team that was in a playoff spot and traded away one of their best defensemen while basically half their blue line core was injured, if you're going to say that team isn't rebuilding, I don't know what to tell you. Like, that could not have been more of an obvious rebuild move. That, like, if you watch the Sean Walker trade and you're like, nah, they're still not rebuilding, like get a clue. I'm sorry.
All right, before we get into this draft stuff that I've been, dancing around for the first 13 minutes of today's show, I got to tell you about our friends over at Shady Rays. I brought a pair of my Shady Rays with me, one of my brand new pairs that I actually got with our PHLY promo code, where you get 35% off polarized sunglasses. Because I wanted to do a little demonstration for
Bill,
you.
it is feeling a lot like summer right now.
It is, man. I went down the shore yesterday, right after the show. Ava and I drove down to Sea Isle yesterday, and I was wearing my Shady Rays, but just wanted to do a little demonstration of these tangle-free options they have. Now, first of all, I love these. These are like one of my new favorite pairs of glasses. But you go in Wawa to get something to eat, whatever. Grab an energy drink, as I often do. Got to put them up on your head. Most sunglasses, you go to put them down, stuck in your hair. It's a big problem. These come out clean, no problem whatsoever. I am a big fan of Shady Rays, and I think you will be too, because you got to get ready for the season ahead with Shady Rays, because they're quality shades built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. Shady Rays is an independent sunglass company offering a world-class product rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Their shades have durable frames and crystal clear optics, making them the perfect choice for all outdoor adventures. They have hundreds of options to choose from, so you're bound to find the perfect pair to match your style. They maybe even have a pair in your team's favorite colors. Plus, if your shades ever go missing or take an unexpected hit, don't sweat it. They have the most insane protection in all of eyewear. Every pair is backed by the lost or broken replacements. If you don't love your shades, exchange for a new pair or return worry-free within 30 days. There's no risk when you shop. Their team always has your back with personal and fast support. And exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com and use promo code PHLY for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. And I left them on for the read just to show you, yes, polarized, but they're not messing with my eyes. I'm reading off of a screen right now, and it's not really messing with me.
Yeah, well, you were also getting quite a little bit of praise in the comments over there for your hair. You got showing off his lettuce. Bill is the hairline king. So you got a nice hockey head.
Oh yeah, it's there's nothing better than skating and the hair just flowing behind the helmet. It's the absolute best.
Well, here's a question for you. Actually, using that as a jumping off point. You obviously are someone who normally has facial hair. Yeah. Have you ever done the playoff beard?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do. I tend to grow it out for most sports. Also, I just need to cover my face as much as possible. I feel
that's not true.
What's
Bill.
The line from what is it? Zach and Miri Make a Porno? When Seth Rogen shaves, he's like, I feel like I look like a beluga whale. The facial hair just kind of, you can't really see what's going on under here. But yes, thank you, everybody. All right, centers in this upcoming draft. I wanted to first look at what the Flyers have, because
yes,
I believe at forward as a whole, they're going to be able to figure it out. And I have concerns about what this defense is going to be. I just don't know if they have the offensive production or the physicality that it takes to win a Stanley Cup on defense.
My biggest concern about the defense is I just don't know if they have. Well, it's not even I don't know. I know that they don't have the alpha they need.
Oh, certainly.
If they don't have that guy, I wonder if they are ever going to be a true Cup contender. But there's time. I mean, they can draft a guy, whether it's this year, next year, trade for somebody. They can get him. It's just that I don't think you're going to win a championship with, and obviously you'll have different stylistic players, but you're not going to win a championship with 4 Cam Yorks. No. You need one guy who's a stud. And they don't have that yet. But the forward core, as you said, at wing, It's looking pretty
good.
solid. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously they got Mitchkov hopefully on the way soon, but at some point down the road, he's going to be here. They got Tippett. They're going to have to make a decision on Konechny, but if they keep him, he's at least a clear-cut top 6 forward. You have Farabee unless you turn him to someone else via trade. I mean, you have good wingers.
You have good wingers, whether, guys come and go, but I think the crop of wingers is good. That's it.
Tyson Forrester's developing
Forster.
into looks like he's developing into a really, really good player. I think you have the wing position. You can always use.
You can always get.
It's not like I'm saying that if Cole Iserman slips to the early 20s, like the Flyers should not be jumping on that trying to trade up to get him. They need talent. And whether it's a winger, a center, or a defenseman, they need really good players. They should not be focused entirely on, we don't need wingers because we have Owen Tippett and Matvei Mitchkov. No, get the best players. But if they don't get another winger, I think they will be okay at that position.
Especially if they were to fix their center position, because you look at what they have. I just bring up Elite Prospects depth chart here. Let me read you some of these names at center. Sean Couturier. Yeah, we'll see.
Right.
Scott Lawton, wing, center. He can play both. I think he's a left winger, but he can play. He can play
center. He's better
if you need him to. Morgan Frost. All right, nice middle six center.
Middle six center.
Yeah, he's something. Ryan Johansson. He's never going to play for the team. Doesn't matter. Ryan Poehling, obviously true number 1 center there, according to now.
Right.
Yes,
a very good fourth line center.
Fourth line center.
Yes.
Honestly, it was a good signing.
Absolutely,
he's a nice utility player for them. And then below that, it's like Lazinski, Marati.
Lazinski's probably not going to be with the organization.
Probably not coming back.
Brody's an Aquade guy.
Yeah.
I
don't even know what an Adam Brooks is.
Yeah, he's a nobody.
Brett Gardner, these are not guys.
And they don't have prospects really either. I know there's some theorizing that Rizzo could be a center.
Rizzo and Barkey are both listed.
I don't know
if Barkey can play.
I don't think either of them are centers at the next level. I think if Barkey has already, and I've talked to him about this, he's already changing his mentality because he thinks his game will translate better on the wing at the NHL level. Dude's 5'8". I think he knows he's probably not going to be a center. There's only a few that are that small. It's a rarity.
You have to be pretty freaking good.
He's I think he's recalibrating his mindset that I'm a winger. I'm going to be a winger there. So Rizzo, I'm skeptical he's an NHL player at all, but I feel like if he does break the mold out, I personally think Rizzo is more of a quad A guy, but if he proves that he's better than that, I don't think he's also going to be a center too. I think he probably is a wing. The two guys in their prospect pool who I think have legitimate center potential are Owen McLaughlin, who's in North Dakota. He probably tops out as a third-line center. And then Cole Knuble, who's probably a fourth-line center. That's it.
So
that's it.
Man, if there was a championship for turning out third and fourth line guys, the Flyers, Jesus, they dominate that thing.
They're good at it.
They don't have any centers. That's basically the point of this conversation. Yeah. It needs to be a focus. Now, of course, we've heard in this year's draft, this year's kind of a defenseman-heavy draft.
It is.
If there's an elite position in this draft, it's D. Centers, there's a reason they're focusing on next year's draft. There's a ton of centers, apparently.
But I will say, the more I dig into this draft, I don't think it is a terrible center draft. I really don't. I don't think it is an amazing center draft. I agree that there's a lot of potential top pair defensemen that are going to go in the top 15 picks. I get why people are really excited about it. But I don't think this draft is a weak center draft. I think it is a fine center draft. It just happens to be a very strong defenseman draft.
All right, I think that gives people a little bit more, because to me, I'm I'm worried about the defense, and I hear it's a defense-strong draft. I'm like, well, then what are we doing here?
Right.
Let's find a defenseman.
Right.
Let's figure out how to get one of these guys.
Here's the flip side of that, though. Look, I would have no problem.
Sam Moran.
I would have no problem if they go defense with the 12th pick, if that's who's available. If Zeev Buium slips, if Carter Yakimchuk's there, fine with that. If I personally am iffy on Zane Parekh because I see some redundancy with him and Drysdale, but maybe Drysdale just stinks, and it would be nice to have Zane Parekh if Drysdale flops, because he's looking like he's going to be a super high-end offensive defenseman who can drive your power play for the next 10 years. That would be cool. So I'd have no issue if they go defense. But one thing, because you mentioned about this being a defense-centric draft, especially at the top, I have always assumed, based on this draft and also based on the past few drafts, teams tend to reach for defensemen. You saw it last year with David Reinbacher and Simashev. Like, these are guys, and I like both those prospects. I don't think either of them, I didn't rate either of them in my top 10. I think they were nice 11 to 15 ranked prospects that teams reached on because they really wanted to take a defenseman. And that was in a weak defenseman draft. Now you've got a good defenseman draft. I think there is going to be a run of defensemen in that top 10. And I'm not saying it's impossible that the Flyers could have a good one slip to them. You never know how the draft's going to play out. Like, Yakimchuk seems to be the guy most likely to be there at 12 for the Flyers, and he does certainly fit the kind of things I think the Flyers would value in a defenseman. Would be perfectly fine with that pick. But I could envision a scenario where, like, most of the top 10 picks after Celebrini are defensemen, which then pushes forwards down. And that's when you start getting into the thing of, like, hey, there might be actually a legitimate center prospect with top 6, even 1C potential that's there at 12 because everyone was just so juiced on the defenseman that they let those guys slip further than they would have in a normal year.
And then, like, it also gets to, like, drafting for need. Like, I think they need a defenseman, but that's how you end up drafting a Sam Morin because it's like, well, we need one of these guys. Like, okay, there goes Nurse, there goes Ristolainen. What do we do? All right, take this dude. He's big. And it's, I've always wanted to see him play, but when you see some dudes drafted after him, like Max Domi or Alex Wenberg, it's like, well, maybe could have drafted them. They're pretty good players, But so the center quality in this draft, we have we have some tiers here, and we've been saying all along, it's like the draft tier of Charlie's initial list was like Macklin Celebrini, the next 14 guys,
Yeah.
That's kind of what you've been doing, how you've been laying this out. But in terms of guys coming in to this draft, it feels like there's a couple different tiers of players that might even fall to the Flyers. But let's start with the top tier guys, obviously headlined by Macklin Celebrini.
Yeah, Celebrini, to be clear, he's in that top tier, to be sure. In reality, he's a tier of his own.
Yeah.
And, like, I'm going to be doing a ton of draft content over the next month. I will. I guess that's fair. Michael Kamina says Desnoyers. I think he's more of a Lawton type, like a Lawton type center, where he's not really a center.
He just might not be very good.
I mean, he didn't have that great of a year, especially offensively last year. But going back to the draft for a second, Celebrini, I'm probably not even going to do a video on Celebrini because he's not going past one. It is so clear that there is one player in a separate tier, and that is Macklin Celebrini. However, there are other players who could theoretically be available. Now, we're going to start with Ivan Demidov. This is a guy who I think he's probably a wing, but I have talked to some people who are believers that he could play center at the NHL level. So I'm not going to remove him out of that top tier center entirely. I think there are more believers that he could be a center than I thought there were. Let me put it that way. I personally think he's a wing. Also, he's not going to be there at 12 either. I think it would be shocking if he slips out of the top 5.
It really seems as if he's going 2 or like top 5, and it ain't going to be 5.
Exactly. That's the way it seems like this is leaning. Even if Chicago passes on him, I don't think he gets past 5 or 6. The next 3, though, Caden Lidstrom, Berkly Catton, Constantine Helenius, these are guys that are in that like 2 through 14 or 15 tier. And if the draft shakes out in a certain way, I would say especially Catton and Helenius, because I do think that Lidstrom he's big, he's physical, he's got the production. He dealt with injury this year, but I would find it very difficult unless like his medical shows something seriously concerning in the lead up to the draft. I would find it very surprising if he slips out of the top 10. Catton and Helenius, though, are the 2 centers.
That's Caden Lindstrom is going 6th in Pronman and Wheeler's draft on the Athletic.
That sounds about right.
Their mock. They have him going to Utah at 6.
Yeah, I would think he would be gone by like 8 in a worst case scenario. I'm expecting him to be a top 5 pick. Catton and Helenius, though, if the draft shakes out the way I'm talking about everybody takes defenseman, one or both of those guys could be available. And the especially interesting guy here is Berkly Catton. You just mentioned the Corey Prom and Scott Wheeler mock draft they posted on The Athletic this morning. they have mocked one Berkly Catton to the Philadelphia Flyers at number 12.
They do, and they have the pick before that, Buffalo taking Carter Yakimchuk. So I will be hurt by that. But then, as you know, you've done a ton of research here, and I've been doing some reading as well. And I'll tell you, I'm really starting to like this Berkly Catton guy. Like, they have Cole Iserman going 13, and he's like the shiny toy everyone wants because it's like we're familiar with him. Like, we've seen him. Like, he's just somebody everyone's had their eye on for about a year, it seems like. But Berkly Catton, man, it really feels. This is not the first time I've seen his name mentioned with the Flyers,
right?
Kind of being in that area right there at 12.
Yeah. I think, to me, the reason why Berkly Catton excites me, look, if he slips to 12, it's because of his size. He's a small player. When you're small, and you're as small as he is, he's like 5'10", 5'11". He's thin. He needs to bulk up to be sure. When you're a small player, there's always going to be concerns that he's not going to be able to stick down the middle. And that's fair. You never know. Sometimes small centers can't hold in the middle, and even if they become good players, they have to move over to wing. That's possible. But for me, number one, he's a really fun player to watch. I think the skill level is extremely high, but I also think that stylistically, he does really fit what the Flyers need, in that he's a really, really creative high-end passer. How much have we been talking over the past few months about, like, now the Flyers have all these shooters, they don't have anybody to get them the puck.
It's truly unbelievable.
Catton is an extremely creative playmaker, and he's a high-end skater. Like, this is a fast playmaker.
And that's this team, I think they need a lot, and I am a believer in, listen, I don't think you need all Eric Lindros out there. Like, those dudes are hard to come by. I am a believer, if there's two guys I have rated equal, I want the bigger dude.
Yeah.
But this team needs some freaking speed, man. Like,
yeah.
They need to be able to play with that pace, and John Tortorella wants it. Like, he wants a team that can get up and down the ice.
Well, somebody asked me on Twitter today, because I was talking about Catton this morning, and somebody asked me, what's the difference between Berkly Catton and Morgan Frost? Both undersized centers, both very much lean towards the playmaking sides of their games, both have really good hands. What's the difference? Isn't Catton just another Frost? And the big difference I see between the two is that, and Frost has gotten better at this, he's worked really hard, is that Catton plays so much faster. Like, Morgan Frost, the big thing for years was the pace. He's a good skater. He's actually a very fast skater when he wants to be, but he plays slow too often. He's gotten better at it. He moves his feet a lot more. He's improved overall as a player because it took him 5-6 years to work at that. Catton does everything at top speed. And, like, look, all of these guys that play in juniors are going to need to learn to play with a little bit more pace because they don't have to. They don't have to play fast all the time. But you watch his game tape, and the plays that he makes at speed are pretty ridiculous. And I watch those and I say, like, that's what Morgan Frost can't do. Morgan Frost can't make that. He can make that pass, but he can't make that pass at that pace.
It's one of the things we're like, okay, if Morgan Frost is going to stand out, it's on the power play because you get to be a little bit more deliberate there. Like, and I do want to see a team that is more constantly in motion and pushing the defense with that speed rather than, like, yes, Claude Giroux was excellent at it and it worked, but just, okay, let's see who's open, get it back to me, like that half court stand. Like, that doesn't work all the time. Sometimes you need to be pressuring the defense with speed, and that's something the Flyers badly need.
I also think, too, that, and they've gotten faster. Obviously, Konechny's a good skater.
Considerably faster.
Owen Tippett is one of the fastest straight-line players in the NHL. We saw it by that tracking software that the NHL uses now. But with the way the Flyers play, the way they've changed up their style, now it's more of an attacking, rush-based style. Someone like Berkly Catton is even more intriguing to me now, because now it's not like he is going to be shackled the way he would have been 2 seasons ago when Torts was in his first year, the way that he would have been when Alain Vigneault was basically preaching a forecheck only offense. Now, Catton, who is a really good rush player, he would be able to be let free. And, like, I'm not saying that Catton doesn't have flaws. There are reasons why he would slip to 12. Number one, the size. Number two, he doesn't have, like, he scores a lot of his goals via, like, dangles and in close. He's not much of a shooter. Obviously, there's concerns about center. He doesn't have a lot of physicality to his game, but I watch him and I think to myself, like, I could see him pairing well with Michkov, because Michkov at his core is a goal scorer. And my thing is, who's going to get him the puck in dangerous areas? I think Catton could do that. And he brings the dynamic flashiness that I think this team so desperately needs, the ability to change a game in one shift that this team just lacks right now.
Now, that's what I wanted to ask about, the potential pairing of a Catton with Matvei Michkov. In the mock draft, they say, ideally the Flyers might want to add a little size to put with Michkov, because he's not the biggest guy.
No, in an ideal world, you have Berkly Catton's talent and skating in a 6'4" frame. Yeah. That would be great.
Like, do you think
but if that was the case, he wouldn't be a 12. Yes. He wouldn't be a possibility at 12.
Fair enough. He might be going 2.
Yeah.
Like, do you think that is a potential drawback? Like, we've seen the undersized center work. The GM of this team was an undersized center, but he had his most success with the Flyers. Like, all right, you know what? We're going to give him Scott Hartnell. We're going to give him Braden Shen.
Right.
Like a guy who can get to the middle of the ice, do the forechecking, just be more of a physical presence alongside the one undersized guy. Do you think pairing Catton with Michkov, there's maybe potentially a draw, but like, if he's there, that's maybe the reason they don't take him?
Could be. It certainly could be. And again, like, I'm dreaming on this Catton Michkov pairing. Just because you take Catton, it doesn't necessarily mean he has to be Michkov's center.
Yeah.
You just want to get high-end players. But yeah, I could see them looking at it and saying that would be too little size at the top of our lineup. That's certainly possible. And given the defensemen that are going to be available, like, if there's a scenario where both Catton and Yakimchuk are available, I could see them being like, nah, we want the big physical defenseman with great puck skills, who can rack up points and has really good straight line speed. I could see them making that decision, and maybe they thinking, because you've mentioned this a few times, maybe they would be thinking, there's more centers next year. We'll get our Michkov center in next year's draft. Yeah. Let's get the defenseman with the 1D ceiling now, because we don't know the next time we're going to have that opportunity. I could see that. But Catton is a guy where I watch him, and in a lot of ways, he's kind of exactly what I personally think the Flyers need. Now, if their scouts come back to Danny Briere and they say, we don't think he sticks a center at the NHL level, then he's a lot less interesting to me. He's still a real good player. I would still love to have Berkly Catton as a winger, but he's obviously more valuable to the Flyers as a center.
Yeah.
And if the Flyers don't believe he can stick at center, then that would be another reason to pass on him. I'm obviously not in the room. I don't know what their scouts' evaluation of him is, but that would be another reason where they could say, really good player, we respect him, but just not quite the right fit for us. For me, I see a guy who I don't think he's ever going to be a defensive stalwart at center, but I think he could be good enough where he doesn't get crushed. And then with all the offensive upside he has, like, he reminds me a little bit of another guy who I liked a lot over the last couple of years in the draft. He reminds me a bit of Logan Cooley.
Okay.
And I was very, very high on Logan Cooley.
Listen, I'm just talking about, like, maybe a smaller guy like Michkov. I want to protect him, and I bet you want to protect yourself and your family. Well, you got to protect yourself and your family by staying up to date on your immunizations. And Rite Aid pharmacists are specifically trained immunizers. That's right. You got to check out Rite Aid. Most vaccines at Rite Aid are no cost with insurance or through government plans like Medicare Part D. And if you're unsure about what vaccines you need, you can get a personalized recommendation from a Rite Aid pharmacist. If you have questions about vaccines, you can stop in and ask a Rite Aid pharmacist anytime. Book a vaccine appointment today. You can schedule for yourself or for your whole family at riteaid.com/schedule. State, age, and health restrictions may apply. Ask a Rite Aid pharmacist for details. Rite Aid pharmacists in Pennsylvania can immunize ages 18 plus 1 day for most vaccines and ages 3 plus for flu and COVID-19. And Rite Aid pharmacists can administer a variety of vaccines, including COVID, shingles, pneumonia, tetanus, whooping cough, chickenpox, and much more. So check out vaccine centers at Rite Aid. Select Rite Aid stores have a dedicated pharmacist to administer vaccines and answer all your questions. Have questions, what immunizations you need. Not sure if you're up to date? Feeling nervous to ask questions? A Rite Aid pharmacist will take the time to make personalized recommendations based on your health history and discuss any concerns. No questions are too small. Just walk in or schedule an appointment Monday to Friday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. State, age, and health restrictions may apply. Ask a Rite Aid pharmacist for details. All right, so looking at this, top tier, and again, like Macklin Celebrini is his own tier, and then we have a couple of dudes who kind of fall in under that.
We got Demidov and Lidstrom. I don't think will be available to the Flyers at 12. Catton, we just talked about. The other guy is Constantinius,
which is tremendous name.
It's a really good hockey name. There are a lot of really good hockey names in this draft.
For names.
Yeah.
I will say Berkly Catton could be a great name, but his parents had to fuck around and not include that E at the end, and that's ridiculous.
That's fair. You know what is another really good hockey name in this draft? He's not a first. I don't think he's a first round pick. Maybe he sneaks into the late first round. There's a guy, and his name is John Mustard.
Oh my God.
So good.
I'll trade the whole draft to get him. I don't give a shit. We have to get John Mustard.
John Mustard.
Oh
and
my God.
And he's a shooter. Like he's a goal
Oh,
scorer.
he put some mustard,
on that shot.
Oh, you fucking writers are going to go wild with that dude. Oh, we need to get him.
But
Constantinius, that's, again, great. What can you tell us about him? And do you think is he a reach at 12? Is he going to be there? Like, do you think it's that 9 to 15 range for him?
Yeah, I think he probably goes somewhere in like the 8 to 15 range. I like Constantinius a lot. And if Constantinius ends up a Philadelphia Flyer, I personally will enjoy watching him play hockey a ton because it's such a cerebral game. He's an extremely intelligent hockey player. I am very confident he will stick down the middle. I just think he plays the kind of game when I watch him where it's like, yeah, he's a center. Like that's just the way he thinks the game. He's 1 or 2 steps ahead of everybody. And it's an intriguing pairing with him, a theoretical pairing with him and Michkov, because Michkov also, especially offensively, thinks the game at such a high level. It would be very attractive to pair those two guys together and kind of have a super high hockey IQ first line for years to come. That's intriguing. Personally, he's not one of my favorites in this tier, and it's because I want to see the Flyers take a bigger swing. We've been talking about it for years about them needing high-end talent. We talked about it literally the entire show, basically, since we launched with PHLY.
It's been the point of the show.
I am not convinced that Hellenius has star-level potential. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the hockey IQ is so high that he will be able to be an 80-point-a-year guy who drives play to a ridiculous degree, and on the whole, he produces star-level results. That's possible, and maybe he just will have incredible chemistry with Michkov. I don't see a guy with a dynamic skating gear. Catton's a better skater than Hellenius. I don't see a dynamic playmaker in terms of his passing. He flashes it. He'll get some good passes through, but he also gets a lot deflected. I watch him and I see a guy who like looks to me like a great 2C. And I could be wrong, but that's why I'm a little hesitant. Like if I'm a team like the Devils, maybe I'm like, you know what? Yeah. Like throw him in there with Hughes and Hischier and we're golden. If I'm a team that has the high-end talent and I'm looking for the super steady guys that are the next tier down, Hellenius is very attractive to me because I don't think he's a very risky prospect to take.
Okay.
I think he's going to be a darn good NHL player. I just think the Flyers are in this position right now, personally, in my opinion, where they need to be taking bigger swings. Hellenius, to me, is not a big enough swing based on what I've seen, but I don't hate him. I said on a few shows ago, before I went on vacation, watching Constantinius play, he reminds me in a lot of ways of Joel. What I remember seeing from Joel Farabee when I was scouting him in the lead up to the 2018 draft. That was 2018, right? Was Farabee? Or was it 2019?
Yes.
2019?
I think 19
it was 2018.
York.
Yes, 2019 was York. 2018 was Farabee.
Yeah.
There's a lot of similarities. They're both very intelligent players. They both are relentless on the forecheck. They think the game at a high level. He reminds me a lot of Farabee, except Hellenius is a center, whereas Farabee's a wing. So, and I love watching Joel Farabee play. Farabee was my guy in that draft. I wanted them to take Joel Farabee with their first pick. So it's not that I dislike Hellenius. And I could envision a scenario where the hockey IQs with him and Michkov work really well together and they form a dynamic duo. But I don't see a dynamic element to his game yet, which is why he wouldn't be one of my preferred choices at 12.
All right. Yeah, and just to put a wrap on him, the Athletic mock draft had Hellenius going 15 to Detroit.
Yeah, they had him slip.
And the consolidated top 32 in elite prospects, which is just like, basically the average of all the mock drafts that they have. Hellenius is at 11.
Yeah, I mean, there's a decent chance he's going to be there, especially if there's a lot of defensemen that are taken. Like, the reason why he slips to 15 in Prom and Wheeler's mock draft is because, and this is a guy who I've watched zero tape on, Proman just like picked a random Norwegian defenseman at 14. And I'm like, well, shit, I've studied up on like 60 players, and I guess I got another one I got to learn because I had no idea he was even a consideration in the top half of the draft. But again, teams reach on defensemen all the time. If a couple teams reach on defensemen in that top half of the draft, suddenly the Flyers are looking at multiple forwards, not just a Hellenius, but they're looking at Catton, they're looking at Yzerman, maybe they're looking at T.J. Ginla. Like, if this becomes a run on defensemen and maybe one or two guys who we're not viewing as part of that top tier end up going in the top 13, 14, it just opens the door for the Flyers maybe to pick up the trash and grab a forward who probably shouldn't be available where they're picking.
We're going to talk about this next mid-tier of centers in a second, but I got to tell you about something that isn't mid first.
It's a good transition.
It is what it is. And that's FOCO, baby. That's right, because FOCO has the absolute best officially licensed gear for all sports and fandoms. Whether you're looking for hoodies, jackets, beachwear, even overalls. I see we got the shorter alls in a couple of days ago, the okay. Phillies ones.
All
I was going to snag a pair, but I think like Jamie and Renee were like, all right, where the Phillies be?
I mean, fair.
Come on, FOCO, get us some Flyer stuff. No, it's whatever you're looking for.
Do you really
FOCO,
want to be wearing short overalls in a hockey rink?
Not really. I will. I'm not looking forward to that.
Okay.
But FOCO has something for every fans for almost every occasion. And hey, if you're in the market for some accessories, toys, or collectibles for your man cave, she shed, or podcast set, FOCO has you there as well. You've got to use FOCO for all your team gear needs. FOCO always has our back for Philly sports, and they have yours too. Get the best gear around by using the link in the description of the show. And for all non-presale items, use promo code PHLY10. That's PHLY10 for 10% off at FOCO today. Shop at FOCO. It could be a lot worse.
Sure could.
Yeah.
And they're pretty good too.
Oh, no, that's... It's like, I hate saying it. I just think it's the only way to get the point across I'm trying to make without saying what everyone knows I'm saying.
Reasonable.
If any of that makes sense.
Reasonable.
Yeah, but shop at FOCO. Now this mid-tier of centers in this draft, they're guys who you might not want to see them take it 12. It might feel maybe like drafting for need if you go, well, we have to have a center here.
Yeah.
But the Flyers what's the earliest the Florida pick could be? 29?
Yeah, 29 or 30,
I don't know if they're making it there.
Yeah, I don't think either of these two guys will be there, but they could potentially be trade-up candidates. The Flyers do have that late first-round pick from Florida. They, in theory, have 2 seconds. We'll get into this a little bit later, but they at very least are going to have 1. They could trade up for one of these guys. So with these guys, again, more great friggin' names. Michael Hayes is fine. Jet Lushenko. That is a name, man. That is a hockey name.
We had the comment yesterday. Like, I guess he got mocked to the Flyers at some point. And it was,
he did. He was in the Craig Button mock draft.
It was the Craig Button, yes. Jet Lushenko, that the Flyers liked him. And, man, when you said his first name was Jet, I was like, I'm in.
And he's fast.
Yeah.
So that's the big thing with Lushenko.
We need Jet and Mustard, man. We need these
Jet
dudes.
and Mustard. Oh, man, that would
For
be
the
a heck
writers.
of a haul.
Think of the writers,
That
Danny.
would be a name haul. Jet and Mustard.
Think of the writers, Danny. Think of the writers.
Jet Lushenko, we'll go with him first. I'll get into Michael Hayes in a second. Jet Lushenko it seems to be one of those risers. One of those guys who, as teams are putting together their draft boards.
Would you say he's taking off?
Really, Bill? You like the way you said that.
I don't care what you're talking about.
You almost felt embarrassed.
Yes, I had to say it. It's not that I wanted to. It was just one of those things that needed to be done.
But in any case, this happens in the lead up to a draft where as all the scouts come together and then it starts leaking out the guys the teams like, you start to hear like, this is what happened with Cutter Gauthier. Gauthier, when I first started doing my draft research 2 years ago, I originally had Gauthier in like that 15 to 20 range. And then over the next month and a half, you just hear more and more like, more teams watch tape on this guy. They think he's real good. He might go in the top 10. He might go in the top 5. Oh, the Flyers
He's going
took him.
5.
He's going 5. Luchenko, I don't know if he has that kind of helium, but he's definitely on the up and up. The skating ability is really good with him. He can fly. When I watch him, I don't see a player who necessarily uses his skating as well as I think he could, but the tools are there. And if he figures out ways to take better routes in the neutral zone and just take better advantage of the fact that he really should be a guy who is a controlled entry demon, he could be a top 6 center. And I think teams, the more they watch, and I believe he also, according to what I've read from multiple reports, because I only watched really the gold medal game, that he was very impressive in the under 18s. So that helped his stock as well, in that, more teams were like, oh, got to give his tape a second look, and then they liked what they saw. I know Button had Luchenko going 12 to the Flyers. That would surprise me. It would surprise me if he's going up that high. But I don't think he gets out of the top 20. So he's intriguing. I think what's really going on in this draft, you're seeing this too with Beckett Seneca, because this draft is such a clear line between like the top 14 or 15 and then everybody else, teams are so desperately looking for signs of anybody else who has top of the lineup upside. And they see the skating ability of Jet Luchenko and they're like, hey, he might.
He'll always use speed.
He might have that upside. And that's the same with Beckett Seneca. With him, it's more the puck skills that they're seeing. And he had a really good playoff run with Oshawa in the OHL over the last month or so. So that has him shooting up draft boards as well. But I just think teams are desperately looking for guys they can dream on a little bit outside of that clear-cut top tier. And Luchenko seems like he's one of the guys that teams are starting to zero in on as maybe. He doesn't maybe have the certainty of the guys that are clearly in that top 13, 14, but the upside is there, and I don't think he gets past 20. So if the Flyers want him, they're either going to have to reach for him or they're going to have to trade up further in the first round to get a look at him.
And I do wonder, like you're saying, teams in that draft area might just be like they have a target in mind, and there's one dude that they think is worth this pick, even though it's kind of just, 15 to 60 are all the same. Basically what we're being told, like if they have that one guy, maybe teams won't want to trade out. But if the Flyers say are targeting a Jet Luchenko and, they're at 22, I don't think the prices are going to be that high to move up. If teams think like the whole draft is the same from 15 to 60, well, then who cares? Let's bank some, we'd rather more darts. So let's basically do like the Howie Roseman thing, trade down, and we just get more opportunity.
I mean, my thing is if they, because this is going back to the Button mock draft, if they really like someone like Luchenko, to me, and this speaks to what you were just saying about, the general consensus is that somewhere between 16 and 40, kind of similar guys in terms of how they're viewed around the league. If you really like Jet Luchenko, this would be a prime time to trade down because you're trading out of that top tier. Presumably, a team trading up into that top tier would give a little bit more than normal. Like if you could get, if say your scouts say this Luchenko guy, he's learning how to play the way he needs to play, and he can be a 1C, and we can get him at 16. Maybe you can squeeze a first round pick out of somebody, and for next year. Because somebody's like, man, I really, really need Carter Yakimchuk because I need that top defenseman.
That's fair.
There could be overpays to get into that top tier. I would much rather do that than just reach on a guy like Luchenko at 12.
Yeah. No, I think it's as much, the Flyers can move up and maybe get that. I've looked at that 11th pick with Buffalo.
Right.
I just think the prices to get into the top 14 are going to be super high because there's only that many dudes. And then if you like a specific guy after that, it might not cost a ton.
And maybe you get creative. I mean, I know, I think Anthony DeMarco threw the idea out there of maybe they could use Scott Lawton, combine that with the Florida pick, and maybe you can move back up into that top 14 area. Hey, if that's an option, go for it. I'm skeptical that actually would be available. But if Buffalo's open to it, if they really decide they want that culture guy to get them on the right track and they're willing to talk about pick 11, I mean, if you could come away from this draft with Carter Yakimchuk and Berkly Catton, I'm jumping for joy here. That would rule.
Oh, yeah. No, I think Buffalo is one of the teams you're going to be able to take advantage of, whether it's they trade you someone good because they're like, well, we're these young guys, we got to figure something out, we got to mix up the culture, or they want to add a culture dude like Scott Lawton. You might be able to get that little bit extra value for him that you didn't think was there. Let's get to the late firsts now.
Well, real quick,
Michael Hayes.
Michael Hayes, yeah. Michael Hayes is actually a guy I like a lot.
Okay.
I know he's a guy that Alex Appleyard likes a lot.
Wow.
He had a real good second half. He's a USHL center. Real good second half. Put up good numbers in that league.
Canadian in the USHL.
I don't know if I see 1C potential in him, but I think I see top 6 potential in him. And, you know, he look, he's not a perfect player. The skating is fine. It's not elite. I do really like the playmaking ability. Like, in a way, there's a little bit of like, you know, I guess I'm biased in this draft towards playmakers because I see the way the Flyers roster is shaping up from a forward standpoint. And I want guys with the creativity and the vision to be able to get the puck to players like Mitchkov and Forrester and Tippett and Konechny if they re-sign him. I want those kinds of guys because I just think they lack them. I see what the power play is. I want guys that can run the show. And I'm sure Mitchkov, when he gets here, is going to help out a lot, but I want more. I want more guys that can create for all the shooters that the Flyers are bringing in. And I do see Michael Hayes as a guy who potentially could fill that role. I like the playmaking upside there. I really do. So he's a guy who, again, I don't think he would be there for the Florida pick, but he's a prospect I really like. And let me put it this way. Let's say the Flyers had made the playoffs and they ended up picking 16 or 17. He legitimately might be my guy. Like, if the Flyers were picking 17 or 18, I might be on this show instead of being like, man, I really like Berkly Catton. I might be on the show being like, man, I really like Michael Hayes.
That is, I think that's a great way to put that. Like, if the Flyers had that pick, like, it's someone we might be zeroing in on.
Yeah.
That kind of gives you a sense of what his upside is.
Yeah.
So I like that a lot. Before we go to the potential late first-round picks that the Flyers might be able to acquire with the Florida selection, I got to tell you about Game Time, because Game Time is the place for last-minute MLB ticket deals. Listen, man, we got the best team in baseball right now. I bet you want to go see them. You should check them out with the Game Time app. You know about the killer last-minute deals. They have the all-in pricing. See what you're going to pay before you get to that checkout screen. Views from your seats. Know exactly where you're going to be sitting. And the lowest price guarantee. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will get you back 110% of the difference. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. And Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. And with flash deals, you can save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. And there's so much to choose from. Baseball's the hottest ticket in town. You can check out so many great games and shows coming to the area with Game Time. I believe Megan Thee Stallion is tonight. You have the D1 men's lacrosse finals on Monday. Rolling Stones coming to Lincoln in June. Pink will be there in August. That's always a great show. So much all over the area. You'd be crazy not to check it out on the Game Time app. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying any tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code PHLY for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code PHLY for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So now this late first round pick, I'm very interested in how the back end of this first round is going to play out.
I don't think anybody knows.
Yeah,
there's such a wide range of opinions.
There's such a wide range, and specifically for the Flyers, they may have 4 picks in the top 51. They may not.
Yeah.
36 is where they'd be drafting if Columbus is to give them their second round pick this year. But they might kick the can down the road to next season. Right. If you had to guess, how do you think it's going to play out?
My assumption is always that general managers can't help themselves, like that they will always want to make the pick if they can. And at the table, Columbus is going to be like, no, we have this guy we really like. We'll give him the pick next year because it's instant gratification. And also, Granted, the Columbus situation is a little bit different because they will presumably, at some point, be hiring a general manager, a new one.
You'd think he'd want to make a pick.
Yeah, but I mean, my point is that I think that in these types of situations, GMs generally kick the can down the road because they don't know if they're going to be around to make that pick in a year or two. Because, hell, you never know. Guys lose their jobs all the time. This might be a little bit different.
You would
because
think
you're
the
getting,
GM is going to last a year.
Yeah, you're thinking he's going to get a second draft at least, but I guess you never know.
Chuck Fletcher.
If I had to guess, I would guess that the Flyers will not have that early second-round pick. But if you're the Flyers, you have to prepare for this draft as if you're going to have it, because with the way that the terminology of the trade, the restrictions and whatnot, the way it was worded is Columbus doesn't have to tell the Flyers until the end of the first round.
After the first round.
Yes.
Yeah, like
that night, basically.
The 28th, like before the next day, because round 1 is the first day, is the 27th,
and then the round 2 through 7 is day 2.
Basically that night.
Yep.
First round's over. Now, not Jarmo Kekalainen calls the Flyers and says, "This is what we're doing."
You brought up an interesting scenario off air, though. And
to trade up.
So if let's say the Flyers are in a scenario where, like, okay, let's say Jet Luchenko's their guy. They didn't take him at 12, but they love him. And he slips to 20. And they're like, well, shit, there's no way he's going to be there at 31 or 32, wherever Florida finishes. But we could use maybe one of these second-round picks and jump up and get him. I would be intrigued if they would be able to go to Columbus and be like, look, we're trying to trade up. Your pick, whether it's this year or next year, is part of our ammunition, but the team we're talking to kind of wants an idea as to whether this is a pick for this year or next year, which way you lean it.
That's I think this is where the Jonesy magic comes into
play. Probably right.
Jonesy can just be like,
he's going to call up John Davidson. They're probably buds.
Yo, dude. Yeah. Can you just let me...
just give me an idea which way the wind's blowing here.
You have to tell me 12 picks from now. Could you tell me now? Because we want to move up and trade this pick. And I think there's a case for Columbus either way. Like right now, it's a relatively high pick at 36. I believe it would be 36 overall.
Yes.
So the fourth pick of the second round.
Yeah, because they stink.
Yeah, because they're horrible
this year.
You would think they're going to be better next year because it's hard to be the fourth worst team in hockey. A couple years in a row, basically. You eventually start winning a few more games. But next year's draft is deeper. So maybe we're drafting 40th next year, but we might get a better player than we do at 36 this year.
It could go either way. Yeah.
I think there's an argument either way.
That's absolutely true, where next year the 40th overall pick might be the equivalent of the 25th pick.
Yeah, he might be a low first round grade.
Exactly.
Where this year the 26th pick is a second round grade.
Exactly.
Basically.
So I don't know how it's going to play out. If I had to guess, I would guess Columbus keeps the pick because that is what years of NHL precedent tell me. But I don't think it's a slam dunk. I could see it. But as you said, the uncertainty around that pick does make that turn, the end of the first, beginning of the second, it makes it a little bit, up in the air for the Flyers. But there will be centers who could go in that range, and we have a list of a bunch of them. Linden49 literally asked about one of these guys. So for that super chat, thank you, Linden49. But yes, he is one of those guys. Dean Letourneau. He's intriguing. We'll start out with him since Linden brought him up. Dean Letourneau is a high school prep Canadian who is 6'6".
What?
So that's the thing with him.
Done.
Is that the quality
12.
of competition is extremely low. He hasn't really played against anybody that much because he's basically a high schooler. But a 6'6" center who skates pretty well, he's one of those guys where there just ain't a lot of tape on him. So I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other of whether I personally think he is going to pan out or not. But I want the Flyers to take upside swings, and to take an upside swing on a 6'6" player who this time next year, if he does great at a higher level, you're like, holy shit, the Flyers have one of the top 15 best prospects in the league because they got a 6'6" center who scored a ton at a really high level. Yeah, I wouldn't hate that kind of big swing. He's not one of my preferred picks with the Florida pick, but he's certainly not one I would have a problem with.
And looking at this Athletic mock draft, they have it's Pronman making the pick. He has it going. Dean Letourneau, 29 to Anaheim, so a pick before the Flyers.
I think he'll go
mock.
in that range. I do.
So he could be in that general vicinity, and if they wanted to maybe trade up, he could be there a little earlier. Man, that is an intriguing guy. I will say, like, we have a comp pick in this draft because we took a high school kid.
Yeah. Yeah, this
in
is the Jay O'Brien
now,
situation.
Granted,
again,
that was at 19, and it was like, yeah, he's an American. Like, that makes it a little different to me. But like, I don't know. That's 6'6", can skate and has offensive tools, as Pronman says. It's definitely intriguing.
It is intriguing. It would be, if you're going to take a swing on that kind of risky player, like the second pick of your first round would be the time to do it. Like, to come away with him as your pick, that would seem to be a little bit of a risk. But if you've already got, a Berkly Catton, a Carter Yakimchuk, a Consta Helenius, and now you're just like, okay, well, we got our guy who we're pretty sure is at least going to be good. At least going to be a good NHLer, has the ceiling to be a great NHLer. Now let's take a home run swing on this guy. And like, the thing with Jay O'Brien is that I understood their thought process. I just I thought they could have taken a home run swing on Keandre Miller, who was a lot less risky, but also had high-end tools, instead of taking a guy like Jay O'Brien, who seemed to me to be more of a like Ron Hextall wanting to be the smartest guy in the room kind of pick.
Oh, you don't say.
I mean, he definitely didn't have that.
Do you think that was part of his personality?
No, definitely not.
Yeah. So other players on this list, that Dean Letourneau was very intriguing.
Yeah, it was good. It was cool that Linden 49 brought him up because he was about to come up in our thing. But bring that back up here. We got Lucas Pettersson and Linus Eriksson are both Swedish centers. I don't know if I see super high end upside in either of them, but they're both intriguing. I could see them both as middle six guys. We have Sasha Boisvert, which is a great little French-Canadian name.
Good stuff.
Not as big of a fan of him. I don't love his upside, but like, I think he'll stick at center. Cole Beaudoin. Like him, I just think I don't think he has super high-end upside. But again, you're picking in the late first round. Probably not going to get necessarily those kinds of guys. But I think he has like fan favorite potential. He's a high energy, hard worker. Everything I've heard is that he's a big culture guy, like future captain type. So, hey, maybe you get your next Mike Richards. He's not a great skater. That's the big thing that holds him back. Mike Richards wasn't a great skater either. So, I
don't know, man. Ask David Booth about his skating.
Yeah, that was more explosive launching ability.
No, he was just a violent skater. He was just a violent guy.
I like that. I do like Cole Beaudoin. He's one of my like favorite guys I've scouted thus far. Not sure I would take him at 30 or 31 or 32 or whatever, but he's certainly a guy that caught my eye when I was doing research.
The way you've gone like kind of through this list of centers that might potentially be available at, say, the Flyers are at 30 as Wheeler and Pronman have them mocked, they're at 30, or even say at 36 if they are to make that pick, and that's where they have Linus Eriksson going to the Flyers at 36.
Right, Pronman has Linus Eriksson going there. Yeah.
Kind of sounds to me, all things being equal, when you're laying out the skill sets and maybe ceilings of these centers, the late first round might be where they go defense if they are to, like, if they make both these picks in their spots and they get Berkly Catton at 12. This would be the place. It's like, all right, let's get one of these defensemen. Well, and it's not going to be one of the high-end guys.
Yeah, we'll get into the defensemen, whether it's later this week or early next. We'll get into the defensemen, and there will be defensemen later in that first round that are going to be available. What's intriguing to me about the defensemen that could be available later is they could be the big swing guys. And I want the Flyers to take big swings. Like you have... and I don't even know if any of these guys are going to be taken in the first round because they are viewed as risky. But you've got guys like Kivi Harju, who was viewed at one point as a potential top 5 pick. Had his stock slip, but I think he has top pair upside. He could be there in the late first round and take a home run swing. You got Cole Hudson, Lane Hudson's brother. He very well will likely be available late because I think he'll probably go in the second, but. He's a home run swing option where you're taking a small guy But hey, like Montreal took the swing on Lane and they look like they have a stud. So what the hell? I actually like, I know his stats really aren't there. EJ Emery's intriguing to me on defense because I was reading about he's a today. Guy where like the numbers aren't there, and I'm usually a numbers guy, but you watch him and you're like, he just looks like a top 4 defenseman. Like he just looks like everything I think a top 4 defenseman should be. I could see them going for a bigger swing on defense because I think that there are more big swings on defense that are going to be available in the late first round than big swings at center. The only real big swing available at center is the 6'6" monster Letourneau.
I just love that, Moneyball Charlie over here is sounding like the scouts in that movie.
Yeah, he just looks the part. He really, like the skating, the size, the decision. He looks the part. He just never scores.
I think it's so this guy's never hit before. We're going to give him 400 MLB at bats. He's going to be a good hitter.
Just saying.
Listen, he's got the look.
I have a little eye test in me.
Sometimes you can just see it with dudes. Sometimes you just go, there's too much going on for it not to come together. It just may not have yet. With this, any other things worth mentioning in the late first round, guys? With the Flyers situation here, it's just so up in the air because we don't know exactly where that first round pick is going to be yet because Florida's still playing.
Right.
The Flyers the Athletic mock has them at 30. It looks like they have
the Rangers
winning the cup. They're at 32.
Okay.
And I think Edmonton advancing to the final.
Interesting. So they're going Edmonton Rangers.
Yeah.
Okay. The Gretzky battle.
Yes.
Gretzky Messier.
Oh, that's good stuff. Yeah.
That'd be cool. Be a fun series.
Oh my God, that'll be unbearable listening to Mark Messier on that. He's fine. But and then at 36, it's like, well, we may or may not have that pick.
Right.
Like it's just it looks like a group of dudes who all kind of fit where they're going to be for potentially 2 spots, and we don't even know what those spots are yet.
Yeah. It's true. It's going to be interesting. And as you said earlier, the intriguing part about this draft is that basically from like 16 to 40, and I've heard this from people with the Flyers organization too, is like from like 16 to 40, it's kind of like 6 of 1. Like, yeah, you're going to have your favorites. You're going to have the guys that your scouts like more than others, but you can take a step back and objectively say that like all these guys have around the same risk-reward profile.
If we were to assign like an objective grade, and this is where you have to just trust your scouts.
Of course.
Like you just got to go with your best guys. But if we give an objective B to everyone, okay, I guess I'm going to trust this scout over this one, and that's just the way it's going to be.
But I think that mostly everybody is in that tier.
Yes.
Once you get past the top 14 or 15, like depending on how you feel about guys like Seneca, guys like Trevor Connolly.
I like this today. I like this positional breakdown. Obviously, this is one of the 2 big positions of need. Like they need top pair defensemen and they need top 6 centers. That's what we're looking for right now. And we did the centers today. Do we save the defensemen for tomorrow or Friday? We'll figure it out.
Well, we got to do F around Friday.
Yeah. So forwards.
Maybe that's the wingers.
Yeah. They ain't taking a winger. I mean, like, listen, if Cole Yzerman's there and like Berkly Catton and Yakimchuk aren't, like you could do a lot worse, I think.
I would agree with that. I mean, Iginla, he would. Man,
who wouldn't want Iginla's kid?
But come on, that's just cool. Flyers fans would love TJ Iginla. Yeah, that would freaking rule.
It's just freaking cool. Like I would take either of those guys. They might not be my top choice, but yeah, I don't think they're going to be bad players. All right, so we'll figure it out, but we'll be back tomorrow at 1 o'clock. I think we're going to be remote tomorrow. I don't think we're going to be in studio, so that'll be a nice time for us. We'll get to talk to Charlie in his study. Many leather-bound books. All right, it's like
smells of rich mahogany.
Yeah, all right, it's 2:11. Let's get the hell out of here. All right, that'll do it for today. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for hanging out. This has been a great time starting the draft preview process. Over a month still of draft stuff to go. Make sure you're subscribed so you never miss any of our draft coverage. Charlie is excellent at this, and I can read, so, it all comes together. But make sure you're subscribed here. Follow the podcast at PHLY Flyers, at PHLY Flyers Podcast, on Twitter at PHLY_Flyers. My name's Bill Matz. For Charlie O'Connor, stay loose and sexy, Philly.
We all silly like the mayor.